Hello, writer friends. I am so excited today to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, and that is writing. I am Tamara Bundy. I am the author of some middle grade novels that you might have heard of. Pixie Pushes On is my latest middle grade from last year. And then my first middle grade is Walking with Miss Millie. And then also last year I had my first picture book come out called Lullaby Prayer. So as you can imagine, I love writing and I love talking to other people about writing. I also teach part-time at Miami University, and there I teach people about writing. So I might be a little obsessed with writing, so I'm thrilled to talk to you about it. I knew that I wanted to be a writer by the time I was in second grade. My second grade teacher had us all write a poem, and I loved poetry because I was crazy about Dr. Seuss. And I thought if it didn't rhyme, it probably wasn't any good, and I just thought I was always going to write poems. But my teacher asked us to write a poem, and I wrote a poem, and she said, "You're good. You're a good writer." And those words made such a difference in my life. So that reminds me of one thing to always point out is that our words have power. Whether they're written, whether they are spoken, they have power. And they have the power to do good, and they also have the power to do harm. So always make sure your words are used for good, please. But that day the teacher said, "You're a good writer," and those words planted in my brain, and I thought, I can do this. And it made such a difference to me. Such a difference, as a matter of fact, that it's been over 50 years since I was in second grade, and I still remember that silly poem that I wrote. It goes like this: "When I go to bed at night, my body seems to go on a flight. Everything seems to be spooky, but it's just me going kooky. I see little things moving around everywhere. What's there? Oh, it's just my hair. Some people might call this fascination, but it's just little old me and my imagination." So I remember that poem. I forget many things these days, but I remember that poem. But I think it's ironic that it's about using your imagination, and it was really what inspired me to use my imagination the rest of my life. From that moment on, I knew I wanted to write, but I also knew it was going to take a lot of work. So it would be many, many years. I would end up going to college to major in education, where I became a high school English teacher for a while. And then I wrote some nonfiction books. You can kind of see them back there. Some of my nonfiction books are for parents, and some were for the religious market too. But it wasn't until I was grading book reports that I started thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could have my words, my work, my books read by students? And I just thought, that's a really cool audience to think of. So at that very time, I have 4 kids. You can probably see some of them over here. There we go. That's them when they graduated from high school. But at the time, my middle daughter was in middle school, and we had just moved, and she thought she had no friends. And at the time, she would come home from school and do nothing but want to watch TV and be sad. And so I noticed at the same time that we had a neighbor who had asthma and a dog, and it was really hard for her to walk the dog around the block sometimes. I would see her kind of huffing and puffing. So I got talking to her one day, and I thought, maybe I could connect my daughter with her and have her have something to do after school. So convinced my daughter to go over to the neighbor lady and offer to walk the dog every day after school. But the dog refused to walk with just my daughter. So the neighbor lady said, "I'll go with you until he gets used to you." Well, that day never happened. It became a daily walk between the elderly lady, my 12-year-old daughter, and the dog. And it became this unique friendship that I knew I wanted to write something about. So that was the premise behind Walking with Miss Millie. That was the initial premise. I always say I plant the seed in reality and then I let it spring into fiction. So this seed was planted by what happened with my daughter. But then I got thinking, because I was teaching high school at the time, and at the time we had some not nice things being said by one particular student about an entire group of other students. And I just thought, oh, I wish we could all just get along, and I wish we could all learn from where we've come from in the past. And so I decided, what would happen if I wrote this story but planted it in the 1960s and planted it in the South, where there was so much unrest between people who were not willing to give people their civil rights. And so I did a lot of research. It takes a lot of research to write some of these things too. And that's where Walking with Miss Millie came from, and I'm so proud of it. Then after I turned that one in, it was time to write another one. And my mom grew up on a farm, and so she always told me about a lamb she had whose name was Buster, and this lamb was more like a dog to her. And he would help her with the chickens. He would help her with all those awful things that she didn't like for chores on the farm. And so it was the 1940s, and it was on the farm, and so it was hard to keep a 100-pound pet. And so lambs had to be used for certain things on the farm. And when my mom would tell me that story, I was a city girl, and I'd say, wait, what happened? That's so sad. And I just knew I wanted to put that into a story sometime. So again, planted the seed in reality, and then I let it spring into what would happen if during that same time a lot of polio was going around, and what if her sister had polio? And that kind of sprouted into that, which ironically this book came out right before everything shut down for the pandemic last year, and polio was a big pandemic that people were very scared about. And then lastly, what inspired me to write my picture book was just the fact that my 4 kids, just being able to tuck them in at night just gave me so much joy. And I would always try to give them something to hold on to and say that I can't be with you, but I would give them the faith they needed, that they were going to be safe through the night. So I always say, plant the seed in reality and let it grow into fiction. That's some of the best advice that I think I can give you. You might see back here too that I have some of my little stuffed animals. These stuffed animals are actually inspiration too. I can see, if you ever read Walking with Miss Millie, this little guy might look like Clarence the dog. If you read Pixie, you might notice that this little guy is Buster. And if you heard me mention just a bit ago that I'm crazy about Dr. Seuss, this is reminding me of Dr. Seuss. And then I also have this little pencil that I've had since I was that little 2nd grade girl, and we went to a fair after that, and my dad won me a prize, and he said, "Do you want a teddy bear?" And I said, "No, I want this pencil because it says I'm a big time writer on it." And it meant so much to me, so it inspired me so much that obviously I've held on to it for all these years. So I also like to have little things around my office that remind me of all the books that I've written, that remind me to dream. I don't know if you can see some of my various titles and things that were in the paper. Over here, I get to show you my Walking with Miss Millie award for the Ohio Honor Award. So it just means so much to me that people are reading anything that I've written. So to get an award is like extra blessing, and I love it. So as you can imagine, everything around my office has to do with inspiration. Your journey is unfolding exactly as it should be. These are different things that I wrote to this lady named Irma Bombeck once. And you can also see, if you know Sharon Draper, she's the amazing author. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I met her right before Walking with Miss Millie came out, and she gave me the Draper touch. And so I was so honored to just be in her presence, and to actually have her give me the Draper touch meant so much, even more to me. I really think you should surround yourself with positive thoughts. Surround yourself with what inspires you, because it's kind of like what goes in comes out. And if you put negative things in, I can't do this, I can't do that, then that's what's going to come out. But if you plant the seed of, I can do this, and surround yourself with really good people who support you too. That is so important. So this is my office, and I need a quiet spot, with the exception of this crazy dog that is always at my feet, Toby. I am always by myself when I write because I need that quiet. I know some of my friends who are writers are very successful writers, going to a Starbucks and sitting down and writing at the table. not me. I can't even have music on. Some of my friends write with a soundtrack that represents their characters. I can't. I would be singing along to that. So to me, I love having quiet. It inspires me to write. Otherwise, I get easily distracted. I need to turn off my phone and everything else too, because it's just too tempting to stop what you're doing. When I do get stuck and I do get writer's block, sometimes I will walk the dog that's at my feet right now, and sometimes I'll just look out a window, and sometimes I will say, okay, that's probably enough for today. Maybe my brain's just telling me you're done. You can't force it sometimes, but sometimes I can go on and write the next chapter, write the part that I'm getting excited about to write if I just can't get this part right now, and come back to that part later. To me, I always say that if you want to be a writer, when people come up and tell me, what do I need to do to be a writer? I'm like, if you write, you are a writer. But you need to also read. You need to read a lot. It's just like if you were to say, I want to be the best musician or the best athlete, you would learn about being an athlete, being a musician, by watching the people who are really good at it do what they do and then learning from what they've done. It's the exact same thing with writing. You need to read a lot so that you can see what it is you really like. And then you can learn from the masters. You can learn from the professionals. One of my favorite quotes is from Richard Bach, who says, "A professional writer is simply an amateur who didn't quit." I love that because it's true. If you are writing, you are a writer. But if you don't quit, maybe one day you can be a professional writer. It's really that simple. There's a lot of time that went between that second grade little girl who dreamed of being a writer and me getting my book deals. But I just didn't give up. And that's what I tell people, no matter what your dream is, don't give up. Another quote that I really like is, "I write to discover what I know." And that is Flannery O'Connor, another great writer. And I just think that that is really, really true for me, especially because writing is great therapy to me. It's like keeping a journal. Sometimes I have to process the day by writing. Sometimes I write it in fictional characters, and sometimes I write notes to myself in a journal form. So I really think it helps us process things too. And I also like, I think it is, let's see, I wrote it down, Henry Miller, who said, "Writing is its own reward." I don't know how many times I have people in a classroom when I'm giving a talk say, "So do you make a lot of money?" And the truth is that most of us don't make a lot of money. We do get royalty checks, we do get advances, and it's wonderful. But the millionaires in the club are fewer and farther between. So if you're writing because you want to be a millionaire, you might be not leading into success. You may not be happy based on that. But if you're writing because you love to write, then you're always going to be a success at it. I always tell people that too. I wanted to give you just a little bit of, which one shall I read? How about Pixie? Pixie came out right before the pandemic, and I didn't get to do all my school visits, so I do miss reading a bit from Pixie. So let me read to you a little bit about Pixie Pushes On, and I'll just start with chapter 1. Daddy burned all Charlotte's bedding and blankets the day they took her away. Her dolly, her books, and her clothes, too. Dang near burnt everything. And I watched as my sissy's things and my hope for ever seeing her again all went up in smoke. When I first saw Charlotte fall flat as a flapjack, I wasn't worried. But when I helped her up, I could tell she was sweating out a fever something fierce. That's when Doc Simpson came and told Daddy she needed to go away to the hospital. That's also when the grown-ups in my life started whispering every time I left the room. Then when I overheard Grandma and Granddaddy on the back porch asking Mama high up in heaven to hold Charlotte's hand, I feared my sissy was plain dead. And I was plain heartsick. I was heartsick my sissy had died, leaving me all alone after she promised she'd never leave like Mama did. Even after she pinky swore she'd help me get through 5th grade with Miss Meanie Beanie. And she never broke a promise before. After I spent all afternoon being heartsick with sadness, I come to find out She wasn't dead at all. That made me feel a wash of relief the size of a waterfall. But seeing how I'm the reason my sissy got sick in the first place, I was still plenty upset. Feeling that truth down deep in my insides hurt. And when my insides hurt so much, I wondered if it was because of sadness, guilt, or the same thing Charlotte had. Charlotte would know. She always knew what to say or do, no matter what needed saying or doing. I figured it was 'cause I was feeling extra bad that Daddy and Grandma kept me home from school for a bit after Charlotte took sick. But it turns out that old school didn't want me there. Daddy had to go all the way down to Center Street and talk to the head of schools to make them take me back. Imagine that, begging them to send me to school. I told him not to bother. I'd just as soon walk barefoot in a field of bumblebees than go back to that school again. My teacher, Miss Meanie Beanie, hates me. I know Charlotte had her last year and told me she wasn't mean, but everybody likes Charlotte 'cause she's perfect. So Daddy made me go back to school. No sooner did I walk in that door than Big Mouth Berta, whose daddy owns a grocery store, rushed up to me and said, "I heard Charlotte's got the polio. Oh, poor, poor Charlotte." And that was the first time I heard someone say Charlotte had polio. Just like the President of the United States of America. Polio. Of course, that's the reason she was sick. I practically wrapped up the polio, put a bow on it, and gave it to her myself. I started to walk past Big Mouth Berta when she added in a pretend whisper, "Stay away from Prudence, everyone. She probably has the polio too." And that was my welcome back to school. Miss Meanie Beanie told everyone I didn't have polio, but I don't think she's certain herself, since every day she puts her clammy hand on my forehead when I get to school, and even though I'm cool as a cucumber, she makes me sit every day by myself in a row of desks only used for kids like Rotten Ricky to sit in when they do something wrong, like let a frog loose in school. And every day Miss Beanie Beanie says, "Class, I'm sure Prudence is fine." But instead they must all hear, "Class, don't touch her, you'll catch your death of disease," since not one of my 13 classmates has mustered up the courage to say boo to me. Not that they talked my ear off before, what with me being new to the school last winter. It's not that I didn't have any friends, it's just that when you have a perfect sissy, you already have a perfect friend. That's all I needed then, and it's all I need now. Thank you for letting me read Pixie Pushes On to you, and thank you for listening to my little spiel about writing. I'd love to hear from you. You can email me anytime, and there is a read aloud for some of those things, so I would love to participate more and more in all of your writing endeavors. Good luck to you. Don't give up, and thanks for listening.